The crystal goblet wasn't meant for her lips, but when 7-year-old Amara took that fateful sip in the Vampire King's chamber, she unknowingly sealed a destiny that would take 15 years to claim her. 22 years old and exhausted, Amara wiped the blood from the marble floor of the throne room, her knees aching from hours of scrubbing. The vampire nobles had fed messily again during last night's celebration, leaving crimson stains that seemed to mock her efforts. She was nothing more than what her mother had been before her death 5 years ago, a servant in the house of Lucian Draven, the most feared vampire king in 1,000 years. In his private chamber 3 floors above, Lucian stood before the ancient mirror that had witnessed the rise and fall of his bloodline for centuries. His reflection showed what it always had: sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of aged wine, and the burden of immortality etched into every line of his face. He sensed her presence in his palace like he always had, that strange pull he'd felt since the day she'd accidentally wandered into his chamber as a child. The day everything changed. Amara's hand trembled as she wrung out the cloth, remembering her mother's warning before she died. Stay invisible. Never look them in the eye. Never remind them you exist beyond your service. But lately, she'd been feeling strange. Her senses sharper. Her strength growing. Dreams of blood and power haunting her sleep. Lucian descended the stairs, each step deliberate. Tonight, the ancient prophecy would complete itself. Tonight, the girl who'd stolen a sip of his blood 15 years ago would finally transform into what she was always meant to become. His queen. Whether she wanted it or not. The moment Lucian entered the throne room, every servant scattered like mice, but Amara's legs wouldn't move. She remained frozen on her knees, bucket beside her, cloth dripping red-tinged water onto stone. His presence filled the space like a storm about to break. Leave us, Lucian commanded, his voice carrying that particular edge that made centuries-old vampires obey without question. The room emptied in seconds. Except her. Amara finally looked up, breaking every rule her mother had taught her. His wine-dark eyes met hers, and something inside her chest cracked open like an egg. Heat flooded her veins. The room spun. Do you know what day it is, little maid? Lucian asked, circling her slowly, a predator savoring the moment. His British accent made every word sound like dark poetry. Thursday, my king, she whispered, confused by the question. No, love. It's the 15th anniversary of the day you stumbled into my chamber. The day you picked up my goblet with your tiny, curious hands and drank my blood thinking it was wine. The memory crashed into her. 7 years old. Lost in the palace. Thirsty. A beautiful cup on a table. The sweet, thick liquid. Her mother's horror when she found her. I don't understand, Amara breathed, but her body was betraying her words. Her skin felt like it was burning from the inside. Vampire King's blood doesn't just fade, darling. It waits. It grows. It fuses. And on the 15th year, he stepped closer, his hand reaching toward her face. It completes the bond. Her eyes began to glow the same wine red as his. Amara stumbled backward, knocking over the bucket, bloodied water spreading across the floor she'd just cleaned. No. No, this isn't possible. I'm human. I'm just a maid. Lucian's expression shifted into something almost amused, that dangerous smile that had preceded the death of kingdoms. You were human. Past tense, I'm afraid. Now you're something entirely more complicated. She pressed her back against the cold stone wall, her heart hammering so loud she was certain he could hear it. Of course he could hear it. Fix this. Undo it. I don't want any part of your world. You think I wanted this? Lucian's voice dropped, losing its playful edge. For a moment, something raw flickered across his ancient face. You think I wanted to wait 15 years watching a child grow into a woman, knowing that fate had tied her to me before she could even speak in full sentences? Then let me go, Amara pleaded, hating how weak she sounded. But the pain coursing through her body was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Her bones felt like they were reshaping themselves. I can't. 2 words. Simple. Final. The blood bond doesn't break. It only completes. And when it does, you become my equal in power. My queen by ancient magic, not by choice. I'd rather die. Lucian moved faster than her eyes could track, suddenly inches from her face. Careful what you wish for, love. Death is the one thing you can no longer claim. She tried to shove him away, and her palm connected with his chest with such force that he actually stepped back, surprise registering in his eyes. They both stared at her hand, then at each other. It's already begun, he said softly. The transformation took 3 days, Lucian explained, and she couldn't be around humans while it happened. Her bloodlust would be uncontrollable. He led her, half carrying her trembling body, to his private chambers. The very room where this had all started 15 years ago. I won't stay here with you, Amara protested even as another wave of burning pain dropped her to her knees on his floor. You'll stay, or you'll slaughter every servant in this palace by nightfall, Lucian replied, closing the heavy door behind them. Your choice, but I'm rather fond of my staff. They're difficult to replace. He said it with such casual dark humor that she wanted to hate him more, but another spasm of pain stole her breath. Lucian knelt beside her, and for the first time, his expression held something other than amusement or authority. I know it hurts. I remember my own turning. Let me help you. You've done enough, she gasped. I've done nothing but exist, which apparently was crime enough for fate. He lifted her with surprising gentleness, carrying her to his bed, a massive 4-poster draped in black silk. You despise me. I understand. But right now, I'm the only one who knows how to keep you alive through this. Amara's vision blurred, colors too bright, sounds too loud. She could hear hearts beating in rooms far below. Smell blood pumping through veins 3 floors away. It was overwhelming, terrifying, intoxicating. Make it stop, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Lucian sat beside her, and in a gesture that seemed to cost him something, he took her hand. Focus on my voice. Just my voice. Block out everything else. On the second day, when the pain had dulled to a constant ache, Amara's eyes wandered around the chamber she'd only seen once as a child. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The goblet still sat on the same table by the window. You kept it, she said, her new voice sounding strange to her own ears. Richer. Deeper. Lucian followed her gaze from where he sat in a chair across the room, a book in his lap he'd been pretending to read. I kept everything exactly as it was that day. Call it sentiment. Call it madness. I've been called worse. Why? Amara pushed herself up on the bed, her strength slowly returning. Why didn't you just kill me when it happened? Wouldn't that have been easier than waiting 15 years? Something dark crossed his face. You think I didn't consider it? You were a child holding a death sentence I hadn't asked for. He closed the book with a snap. But you looked up at me with those wide eyes, blood on your lips, and said thank you, that was delicious. As if I'd given you a gift instead of a curse. Despite everything, Amara felt a flicker of something that might have been a smile. My family was built on bonds like this, Lucian continued, standing and walking to the window. My siblings, my bloodline, we were connected by magic older than memory. Then I watched them all die. Betrayal. War. Time. I swore I'd never be bound to anyone again. He turned to face her. Then you stumbled into my life, clumsy and curious, and fate laughed at my plans. My mother never told me the truth, Amara said quietly. She just grew sadder every year. More afraid. I thought she was just tired of serving here. Your mother knew exactly what was coming, Lucian said, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. She came to me when you turned 16. Begged me to find a way to break it. Offered her own life in exchange for yours. Amara's breath caught. What did you say? I told her the truth. That there was no way to break a king's blood bond. That her daughter's fate was sealed the moment my blood touched her lips. He paused. And I promised her that I would protect you with the same ferocity I once protected my own family. That you would never be harmed, never be anyone's victim, never bow to anyone. Even you? Especially me, Lucian said. A queen doesn't bow, love. She stands beside. That was the promise I made to your dying mother, and I am many things, but I don't break promises to mothers protecting their daughters. Tears burned in Amara's eyes, but they felt different now. Hotter. She never told me. She was trying to give you a few more years of normal life. Can't fault her for that. By the third day, Amara could stand without trembling, and Lucian declared her ready to feed. She'd expected him to bring her a human, and was surprised when he brought her a crystal glass filled with blood instead. I'm not a monster who forces new vampires to kill on their first feeding, he said, handing her the glass. Despite what the rumors say about me, I do have some standards. We have ethical sources. Volunteers. Blood banks. This isn't the Dark Ages, though I did live through those, and let me tell you, they weren't nearly as interesting as people think. Amara took the glass with shaking hands. The smell made her fangs extend involuntarily, and she gasped at the sensation. That's going to take some getting used to, Lucian said with genuine amusement. I remember the first time mine came out. Punched myself in the lip. Bled all over a very expensive doublet. She couldn't help it. She laughed. Actually laughed. Then stopped, disturbed by how easy it had been. You're allowed to find things funny, Amara. Immortality without humor is just an eternity of brooding, and trust me, that gets tedious. She drank, and the world exploded into color and sensation. When she finished, she understood for the first time why vampires spoke of blood like poetry. Better? Lucian asked. I hate that it's better, she admitted. Honesty. Good. We're making progress. He sat across from her. Ask me what you really want to know. What happens now? Now you have a choice, Lucian said, and his usual confidence seemed to waver. The bond makes you my queen in power and magic. But I won't force you into anything beyond that. You can have your own chambers. Your own life. You're no longer a maid. You're no longer powerless. What you do with that is yours to decide. And if I choose to leave? Pain flickered across his face, quickly masked. Then I'll let you go. I've lived 1,000 years alone. I can manage more. It was the loneliest thing she'd ever heard. The Council of Vampire Elders arrived on the fourth day, uninvited and unwelcome. Amara heard their arrival from her new chambers, the ones Lucian had prepared for her 3 doors down from his own. Voices raised in anger echoed through the palace halls. She found herself drawn to the throne room, her new vampire hearing picking up every word. You've violated the oldest law, Lucian, a female voice dripped with venom. A king's blood bond can only be formed with another of pure vampire bloodline. You've bonded with a human. A servant's daughter. The bond was an accident, Lucian's voice was cold, deadly. And it's done. She is queen now, and you will address her as such. We will do no such thing, a male elder spat. We demand you eliminate the abomination or step down from your throne. Amara's hand froze on the door handle. Abomination. The word hit like a physical blow. Choose your next words very carefully, Lucian said, and she could hear the threat of violence in every syllable. Because they may be your last. The girl must die, or your entire bloodline will be questioned. Do you want civil war, Lucian? Because that's what you'll get if you parade a common maid as our queen. She should have stayed hidden. Should have let Lucian handle it. But anger, new and hot and powerful, flooded through her veins. She pushed open the doors. 7 pairs of ancient vampire eyes turned to her. The disgust in their expressions was unmistakable. Amara, go back to your room, Lucian said quietly, but she heard the warning in his tone. No, she said, stepping forward. I want to hear them say it to my face. The female elder, a blonde creature in a blood-red gown, smiled cruelly. Very well. You are an accident. A mistake. You have no royal blood, no training, no right to stand beside a king. You're a servant playing dress-up, and everyone in this room knows it. Each word was designed to cut, and they did. That's enough, Lucian's voice dropped to a growl. Is it though? Another elder joined in. Tell us, little maid, do you even know our laws? Our history? Or were you too busy scrubbing floors to learn how to rule? I said enough. Lucian's power exploded outward, cracking the marble beneath his feet. But the damage was done. Amara felt every insecurity she'd buried come rushing back. They were right. She was a maid. She didn't belong here. She'd been cleaning these floors a week ago. If I step down, will you leave her alone? Lucian asked, and the room went silent. Amara's head snapped toward him. What? Will you accept her as a free vampire and bonded to the throne if I abdicate? His face was unreadable, carved from stone. Lucian, no, Amara breathed. Answer me, he demanded of the council. We would have no quarrel with her if she held no title, the male elder said slowly. Then you have my answer by tomorrow night. Lucian turned and walked toward the private exit, not looking at Amara. She followed him, rage and hurt warring in her chest. You're giving up your throne? For me? He spun on her in the corridor, and for the first time, she saw real anger directed at her. What did you want me to do? Let them kill you? Because that's where that conversation was heading. I want you to fight. You're supposed to be this terrifying king, and you're just surrendering? I'm trying to keep you alive. His voice echoed off stone walls. I didn't ask you to protect me. I didn't ask for any of this. She was shouting now, 15 years of powerlessness pouring out. You want to give up your throne? Fine. Maybe you were never strong enough to keep it anyway. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Lucian's expression went completely blank, which was somehow worse than anger. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, each word precisely cut. My family built this kingdom over 1,000 years. I watched my brothers die defending it. My sister burned alive protecting our people. I have carried the weight of their deaths every single day of my immortal life. He stepped closer. And I would burn it all to the ground before I let them touch you. But forgive me if I expected something other than contempt in return. Lucian, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. He turned away. You were right. You're absolutely right. You didn't ask for this. So I'm setting you free. Tomorrow I'll step down, and you can go live whatever life you want, away from me and my apparent weakness. That's not what Leave, Amara. Just leave. She stood in the empty corridor as he walked away, and for the first time since the transformation, she felt truly powerless again. Amara spent the night in her chambers, replaying the fight in her mind until each word felt like a knife. She'd been cruel. Scared and insecure, and she'd lashed out at the one person who'd shown her nothing but protection. Through the walls, she heard Lucian in his room, pacing. Not sleeping. Suffering. As dawn approached, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find an elderly servant, one who'd worked in the palace since before Amara was born. "Miss Amara," the woman said gently. "May I speak plainly?" "Of course, Helen. I served King Lucian's sister, centuries ago. Before the wars. Before the betrayals that destroyed his family." Helen's eyes were sad. He was different then. Joyful. Full of hope. Then he watched his sister burn because he was too far away to save her. His brothers fell because he couldn't reach them in time. He spent 1,000 years believing he's never strong enough to protect the people he loves. Amara's throat tightened. "And tonight, you confirmed his deepest fear." Helen's words were gentle but firm. "That he's not enough. That his protection means weakness." "I was wrong," Amara whispered. "Then don't let pride stop you from saying so. He's preparing to give up everything he has left of his family for you. That's not weakness, child. That's love." After Helen left, Amara stood at her window watching the sun rise, something she'd never been able to do as a human without risking death as a vampire. But as a queen bonded to a king's blood, she had immunities even ancient vampires didn't possess. She'd spent her whole life powerless. Now she had power, and her first instinct had been to wound the person who'd given it to her. She thought of her mother, of the promise Lucian had made, of the loneliness in his voice when he'd said he could manage another 1,000 years alone. Amara made her choice. The council reconvened at sunset. Lucian stood before them, abdication papers in hand, his face carved from ice. The elders wore expressions of smug satisfaction. Then the throne room doors slammed open. Amara walked in, no longer dressed as a maid, but in a gown of deep crimson that marked her as royalty. Her eyes glowed wine red, matching Lucian's exactly. Every vampire in the room felt the power radiating from her. "The king will not be stepping down," she announced, her voice carrying authority she'd never known she possessed. Lucian's head snapped toward her. "Amara, what are you doing?" She walked past the shocked council members, climbing the steps to stand beside his throne. "Not behind it. Beside it. I'm making a choice. The first real choice I've had since this began." "You don't have to do this," Lucian said softly, meant only for her ears. "I know." She turned to face him fully. "Last night I said terrible things because I was scared. Scared that I wasn't enough. Wasn't worthy. But you've spent 1,000 years thinking the same thing, haven't you? That you weren't strong enough to save the people you loved." His jaw tightened, emotions flickering across his ancient face. "But you are enough, Lucian. You were willing to give up everything your family built, everything you've protected for centuries, to keep me safe. That's not weakness." She took his hand, the same gesture he'd offered her during her transformation. "That's the strongest thing I've ever witnessed." "You called me weak," he said, but there was no anger in it now. Just old pain. "I was wrong. I was cruel. And I'm sorry." She squeezed his hand. "My mother taught me to stay invisible, to never reach for more than I was given. But you've spent 15 years preparing to give me everything. Not because you had to. Because you chose to honor a promise to a dying woman about her daughter." Lucian's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so tender it contrasted sharply with his fearsome reputation. She turned back to the council, still holding his hand. "You want to know if I'm qualified to be queen? I'm not. Not yet. I don't know your laws or your history. I can't recite the lineages or the ancient treaties." Her voice strengthened. "But I know what it's like to be powerless. To be overlooked. to be treated as less than. And I will never let that happen to anyone in this kingdom. Not on my watch. The female elder stepped forward. Pretty speech, girl. But it changes nothing. You're still bonded to your king by blood magic older than your entire existence, Lucian interrupted, his voice taking on that deadly edge. And when he spoke again, it was with the full weight of his power. Which means she carries the strength of my entire bloodline. She can walk in sunlight. She has powers you couldn't dream of. And if you challenge her, you challenge me. He released Amara's hand and stepped forward, every inch the terrifying king who'd ruled for a millennium. Now let me be absolutely clear, because I'm tired of repeating myself and you know how I get when I'm bored. Amara is my queen. Not by my choice alone, but by ancient magic that deemed her worthy. You will bow to her, or you will leave my kingdom and never return. The room crackled with tension. And if we refuse, the male elder dared. Lucian smiled, the kind of smile that had preceded massacres. Then I'll remind you why vampires have feared my name for 1,000 years. I've been quite patient lately, gone a bit soft perhaps. But for her? He glanced back at Amara. I'll happily return to the brutal creature you all remember from the old wars. Your choice, but choose quickly. My patience has limits. One by one, the elders bent their knees. When the council had left, the throne room fell silent. Lucian turned to Amara, and for a moment, neither spoke. You came back, he said finally. I never really left. She stepped closer. I was just scared of what this means. What we mean. And now? Now I'm choosing this. Choosing us. Not because magic forced it, but because somewhere between the pain and the fear in your terrible jokes about doublets, I realized something. She reached up, touching his face. You've been alone for so long. So have I. Maybe fate didn't curse us. Maybe it just knew we'd be less lonely together. Lucian closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I've been called many things. Monster. King. Killer. But no one has ever made me feel less alone just by standing beside me. Well, you'd better get used to it. Amara smiled. Because you're stuck with me now. For several hundred years at least. Only several hundred? How disappointing. His eyes opened, that playful glint returning. And here I was hoping for a few thousand. She laughed, and he pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. In that moment, the maid who'd stumbled into a king's chamber and accidentally drunk from his goblet finally understood what she'd really consumed that day. Not a curse. Not a prison. A future. With someone just as broken and lonely as she'd been. My queen, Lucian whispered. My king, she whispered back. And for the first time in 1,000 years, Lucian Draven felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. 3 months later, Amara stood in the same throne room where she'd once scrubbed blood from floors, but now she sat beside Lucian as they heard petitions from their people. She'd been studying every night, learning the laws and histories, and to everyone's surprise, including her own, she was good at this. You're a natural, Lucian murmured during a break between sessions. Though I suspect you always were. Just never had the chance to prove it. I had a good teacher, she replied. Even if he's impossibly arrogant sometimes. Sometimes? You wound me, love. I'm arrogant all the time. It's part of my charm. She rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide her smile. That night, as they walked through the palace gardens under stars that Amara could now see with perfect clarity, she paused by a fountain. Do you ever regret it? She asked. That I picked up that goblet? Lucian was quiet for a moment, considering. I regretted it every day for 14 years. Dreaded it. feared it. He turned to her. Then you walked into that throne room on the fourth day, covered in power and fury, defending what was yours, and I stopped regretting. Started being grateful instead. Grateful that a clumsy 7-year-old ruined your life. Grateful that fate was smarter than I was. He pulled her close. I would have spent eternity alone, convinced I was better off that way. Too dangerous to love. Too broken to be loved. Then you came along and proved me wrong on both counts. Amara kissed him, soft and sweet, so different from the violence and darkness that usually defined vampire relationships. I love you, she said. Simple. True. I don't think I knew what that meant before. But I do now. I love you too, Lucian replied. Which terrifies me, delights me, and makes me want to destroy anyone who ever made you feel less than extraordinary. Very romantic. Slightly murderous. Very you. I contain multitudes, darling. They stood together in the garden, king and queen, both broken in different ways, both healing in each other's presence. The maid's little girl who drank the vampire king's blood by mistake had indeed become his queen. But more than that, she'd become the person who made 1,000 years of loneliness worth surviving. Because at the end of all that darkness, he'd found her. And she'd found herself. 5 years had passed since the day Amara chose to stand beside Lucian as his queen, and the kingdom had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The palace that once echoed with fear now rang with something different. Not softness, Lucian would never allow that, but fairness. Justice. And occasionally, laughter. Amara stood in the council room, her crimson gown replaced today by practical riding clothes. She'd just returned from the southern territories where she'd been negotiating a treaty with the werewolf clans. Alone. Because she'd insisted, and because Lucian had finally, grudgingly, accepted that his queen was as capable as she was stubborn. You're going to give me a heart attack one of these centuries, Lucian said from the doorway, his arms crossed. And yes, I'm aware I don't technically have a functioning heart. The sentiment stands. Amara turned, unable to hide her smile. 5 years, and he still looked at her like she was the most fascinating thing in his 1,000 years of existence. The werewolves send their regards. And this. She tossed him a sealed letter. He caught it effortlessly, reading quickly, his eyebrows rising. They're agreeing to a mutual protection alliance. Amara, do you understand what this means? Vampires and werewolves haven't had peace in 3 centuries. I'm aware. I did study those history books you gave me. All 47 of them. You said there were only 30. You kept sneaking more onto my nightstand when you thought I wasn't looking. She walked to him, adjusting his collar in a gesture that had become habit. You're not as subtle as you think you are. Lucian caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I'm subtle enough. You just know me too well now. His expression grew serious. You've changed everything, you know. This kingdom. These alliances. Me. We changed it together, Amara corrected. I just asked the questions you were too proud to ask. Such as? Such as why we were still holding grudges from wars that happened before I was born. Why vampire children were being taught to hate werewolf children on sight. Why we couldn't share territories when there's plenty of space for everyone. She shrugged. Sometimes an outsider's perspective helps. You're not an outsider anymore, love. You're the most respected queen this kingdom has ever had. Before Amara could respond, a young vampire burst into the room, barely pausing to bow. Your Majesties, forgive the interruption, but there's a situation in the East Village. Lucian's demeanor shifted instantly, the playful husband replaced by the lethal king. What kind of situation? A group of rogue vampires. They've taken hostages. Human hostages. They're demanding an audience with you, threatening to turn the humans if you don't come alone. Amara felt Lucian's hand tighten on hers. She knew what he was thinking. 5 years ago, he would have gone alone, handled it with brutal efficiency, and left no survivors. "We'll both go," Amara said firmly. "Amara." "We'll both go," she repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You taught me that a queen doesn't hide behind her king. So let's go remind these rogues why challenging us is a terrible idea." A slow smile spread across Lucian's face, the dangerous one that still made her pulse quicken. "Have I mentioned lately that you're magnificent when you're being commanding? You may have mentioned it once or twice." They arrived at the East Village within the hour, finding a standoff already in progress. 6 rogue vampires had barricaded themselves in the town hall with a dozen human hostages. The local guards had surrounded the building but hadn't moved in. "Smart," Lucian murmured. "They're waiting for us. For being brave enough to drink from that goblet. For surviving the transformation. For choosing to stay when I gave you the option to leave. For standing beside me in that throne room and claiming your place. For making me want to be better than the monster I'd become." His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "For loving me despite every reason not to." "You forgot one," Amara whispered. "What's that?" "Thank you for keeping your promise to my mother. For protecting me. For never making me bow. For treating me as an equal when the rest of the world saw a servant." She smiled through tears. "For being my family when I had none left." They held each other as dawn broke fully outside, the sun streaming through windows that would have killed any other vampire. But they were bound by magic older than memory, and the rules that applied to others didn't apply to them. Just like their love story had never followed any logical rules. A maid and a king. A human and a vampire. An accident that became destiny. Years later, when Amara wrote in her journal about this moment, she would describe it as the morning she finally understood what the blood bond had really given her. Not just power or immortality or a crown, but a partner. An equal. A love that would last lifetimes. And in his own journal, Lucian would write about the maid's little girl who'd stumbled into his chamber with curious eyes and clumsy hands, who'd accidentally drunk his blood and bound their fates together. He would write about how he'd spent 15 years dreading the completion of that bond. And how he'd spent every year since thanking whatever ancient magic had been wise enough to bring her into his eternal life. Because some accidents, he wrote, are actually miracles in disguise. And some monsters just need the right person to remind them they're still capable of love. The goblet still sat on the table in Lucian's chamber, exactly where it had been 20 years ago. Neither of them ever moved it. A reminder of where they'd started. And a promise of everything still to come. So let me ask you something, and I really want to know. After watching Amara go from a powerless maid to a queen who stood up to ancient vampires, what moment hit you the hardest? Was it when Lucian was willing to give up his throne, or when Amara finally chose love over fear? Drop your answer in the comments because I genuinely love reading your thoughts on these stories. And here's the thing. I just spent hours crafting this entire journey for you. Took me deep into the night making sure every emotional beat landed, every piece of dialogue felt real, every moment of their love story gave you exactly what you came here for. If you watched all the way to this point, you clearly connected with Lucian and Amara's story. So don't break my heart now. Hit that subscribe button. It takes you 1 second, but it means the world to me. Also, I'm so curious. Where are you watching this from? Are you listening to this vampire love story from New York? London? Maybe somewhere tropical where the sun is shining and you're escaping into our dark romantic world? Comment below and tell me where you're enjoying this from. I love knowing that this community is growing all across the world. And speaking of community, you need to subscribe and join the fastest growing vampire love stories family on YouTube. We've got so much planned for you. More forbidden romances. More powerful vampires who'd burn the world for the ones they love. More stories of maids becoming queens and monsters learning to love. You're special to this community, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. I keep telling myself not to quit on these stories, and your one click, that one subscribe, keeps me going. Don't be that viewer who watches all this, connects with every emotional moment, and then leaves without supporting the channel. Don't ghost me now. You've already come this far. Subscribe. Comment where you're from. And I'll see you in the next story. Because we're just getting started.